Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Well, it's going to be an amazing week, isn't it? So what have we got for you tonight? Well, we're going to look at what's happening in Ukraine, an EU reset between Starmer and the European Union. Dominic Raab is back. Why? Why not? And, of course, what's happening with the Supreme Court. So hope you're all very well. So I wanted to start off with this interesting clip. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but Brexit is back, fishing is back, and they make a wonderful mix.
Paul, it's always an absolute pleasure to have your company. Paul, you've seen this coming and you've seen this going year after year after year. Fishermen, our fishing quotas,
Remember, the guy on the left used to be a member of the Brexit party, okay? So he's now a host of GB News, but he used to be a member of the Brexit party. He was an MEP. What did he do for the fishing communities around England in his constituency when he was a member of the European Parliament? Sweet FA.
Stocks being used as pawns in the political game. Does this come as any surprise to you, Paul Lyons, that once again you might be getting that sinking feeling?
Not at all, Martin. Anyhow, good afternoon, Martin. Not at all, because that just seemed, as all fishermen ever get, is betrayal after betrayal after betrayal. There's no other country in the world that's an independent coastal state that would ever dream of giving up the gold and the fortune the sea can bring to its coastal communities.
Okay, to the communities it's important. To the economy, it's about as big as the lawnmower industry. And that's what somebody pointed out in chat some many moons ago. It's the fishing community. Look, it's important to remember that most of the fish that's eaten in Britain is imported. Most of the fish that's caught in British waters is exported. That's why Brexit was such a stupid idea for the fishing community. Which begs the question, why did so many fishermen and fisherwomen support Nigel Farage?
We were so looking forward for Brexit to happen. It never happened. We were so looking forward for...
Sorry. Brexit didn't happen. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to shut down this channel now. I've spent the last few years complaining about Brexit, and this guy has come on and told us that Brexit didn't happen. He's a fisherman who's saying that Brexit didn't happen. So if Brexit didn't happen, then why are all those other fishermen and fisherwomen complaining about Brexit? I'm confused.
When they talk about the Trade and Cooperation Agreement deal, that we would get the waters back and we'd get the fish back and we could even license foreign boats to come in our waters to help rebuild.
I don't understand. Get the fish back. What fish? The fish that you catch is exported. The fish that you eat is imported.
Our local fleets, but no, he want to now play war games with trading off a little bit of fish to stop playing war games in Europe and Ukraine. Well, what he want to do is he want to think who he's got to send out there to fight. Because what I know and what I see around me, we've got an army coming across that channel that he got to cope with.
It always comes down to that, doesn't it? That's about as far as we'll go in the video, but it always comes down to that. Immigration. So, the Brexiteers keep saying, no, it was nothing to do with immigration. It was all about taking back control of our waters, of our fish, our sovereignty, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's about immigration. It's like, I don't like foreigners. I voted to make myself poorer because I hoped it would make the foreigners poorer. We're doing fish talk now in Magaville too. Are they talking about fish as well? Oh my goodness. Christina, great to see you on the stream. Alistair, great to see you on tonight as well. Chatty Rat, great to see you. Fish migrate. Exactly. That was an actual point brought up by the former Taoiseach. Was it Leah Varadkar, or maybe it was Micheál Martin at the time? But they said the fish migrate. The fish start out in one part of the sea, they grow, and they move to another part. So there is no our fish, because the fish started off in another territory and arrived where they were caught. I was going to say catched. Where they were caught in another territory. So, but at the end of the day, most of the fish that's caught in UK waters is sold abroad, while most of the fish that people eat, because British people don't like the type of oily fish that's caught in British waters. They prefer things like mackerel, or no, is it mackerel? I don't know, cod, stuff like that, is it herring also that goes into, maybe not herring. What was it that goes into fish and chips? So that type of fish is caught in salmon, no, haddock, yes. The one that's caught, that type of fish that's consumed, cod and haddock, they're caught outside British waters. Tory Golding, of course they do. Cod is the best. Max, aliens or army, referring to the people coming in small boats? Yes. Aliens. No, I think we all know where he was going with that. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. Harvard University sues over 2.2 billion funding 2.2 billion funding freeze after rejecting demands from Donald Trump's administration. So Donald Trump's administration wanted to, end freedom of expression at Harvard University. He seems to have got his way with Columbia University. And of course, universities are a hotbed for political activity. This is where, many protests begin. The biggest protest against the Vietnam War, I believe, started at Harvard. So these are, it's not just about education, but it's also about freedom of expression, standing up to power, political activities. These are all things that Donald Trump wants to clamp down on, of course. And he's issued a number of demands to Harvard University, and they have basically told him to get lost. Harvard is suing after the Trump administration blocked access to research funding, which the university has called unconstitutional and illegal. Just a side point. I brought this up in a video as well. What is China doing at the moment? China is focusing on the future. They're focusing on AI, on electric cars, on new technologies. And what are we in the West focusing on? Well, Trump is focusing on tariffs, on woke, culture wars. The Tories are focusing on immigration, small boats, stuff like that. And Nigel Farage is focusing on that as well. And unfortunately, the Labour government is going along with that. US general strike, that would be great. Yeah, I think this is what we're going to see going forward. Even conservatives in the US, neoconservatives, the ones who backed George W. Bush, people who were supportive of the Iraq war, even they are now coming out against Trump because they have realized that Trump is no longer interested in the rule of law or the right to a free trial, right to a trial. And this means that anyone could be picked up and put in prison, and not just prison, but sent off to a gulag in El Salvador. So this is a serious situation, and more and more Americans, be them on the left, the center, or the right, are actually coming out against Trump. So we're starting to see a bit of a trickle, which could become a tsunami later on, against the Trump administration. But ways people can react, of course, is protests. A general strike would send a clear message to the Trump administration. It's a bit late now. Yes, it is a bit late now. So many people voted for Trump expecting something else, while most of us said, no, it would be an absolute disaster voting for Trump. Trump is, people thought, well, maybe he'd be like in his first term. No, because he got rid of all of the sane or adults in the room. He kicked them out of the room and replaced them with just insane people. So many cool Star Wars helmets. Thanks for that. I'm a bit of a fan. Harvard is going up against a very stable genius. Somebody made a very interesting point on social media. Says, I think Harvard University's lawyers are probably a better caliber than the one that Trump surrounds himself with. Yes, Trump surrounds himself with just people who will be, yes, you're doing a wonderful job, sir. Yes, of course you'll win this case. Because they just care about getting paid, that's all. and maybe make a name for themselves. I think the American empire is coming to an end. Yeah, I actually not predicted, but I said the Iraq War was probably where the wheels started to come off the US empire. It was, everything was on the up until the Iraq War, and then we saw a huge amount of money lost. American prestige was lost there, and then Donald Trump is the sort of death knell to that. Now, it'll be interesting to see what comes after. There is obviously another day. Things will get better. Before things get better, we will always have to see the worst, but things will improve at some stage if we don't, nuke ourselves. But make America depressed again. Reagan getting rid of the press rules, I'd argue. Donald Trump has got, he's put podcasters into the briefing pool. There's a guy who wears a weird hat, not like myself, but a guy who wears a weird hat was asking questions that the journalists should have been. The AP, the Associated Press, is not allowed in to Donald Trump's briefings anymore because you know why? Did they insult the president? Did they claim that he didn't win the election in 2020? No. They refused to hear this. They refused to name or to call the Gulf of America, the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America. They refused to go along with that. So Trump said, "Okay, you're not allowed any questions." It's insane. But then every time we say it's insane, it's the new normal. Gulf of Trump. So I think Trump is taking on more than he can bargain for, because Harvard University has some pretty big supporters. I think he's going to be in a bit of trouble here because this is also going to galvanize support against him. He's going up against the wrong people here. And I think he thinks, well, I'm Donald Trump. I can do whatever I want. And of course, the people around him are going to go, yes, of course, sir, you're doing the right thing. While a normal president, well, not even a normal president, somebody a little bit more stable or more reasonable than Donald Trump would realize, oh, actually, this would be a terrible fight to get into. He just thinks it's a university, but it's much more than that. And you're going to have multimillionaires and reasonable billionaires, if such things exist. They're going to throw their support behind Harvard because they understand the value of Harvard and why it's so important. And it potentially would galvanize support against Trump. Sorry, I missed Alistair. Thank you so much for that super chat. Trump's dumbing down the population so he can control them better. Just my opinion. Yeah, well, that's why they're gutting in part the Department of Education. They shut down the Department of Education. They say, well, just let the states decide. But so there won't be the resources necessary for schools to operate. I've covered it before, where educators are complaining, we receive a lot of free school meals and stuff like that from the federal government. Well, that's going to all come to an end. And the states don't have the money to pick up the tab there. We think of the states operating pretty much independently. No, they rely on a huge amount of money coming from the federal government, and this is going to harm the states that backed Donald Trump the most, because the red states believe in low taxation for the rich and less public services for the poor, while the blue states, the democratic states, they're more of the idea we need to tax the rich and we need to provide better public services. So the blue states will end up better off. Of course, they're going to struggle as well, but they're in a better position to help the poorest in their states than the red states, ironically. The red states are going to suffer much more than the Democrat-backed ones. Hedgewith just fired a female base commander for leaving pictures of himself and Trump off a visual representation of the chain of command. No other reason. He's not going to last long. I think he's already on the way out. They're already looking for a replacement. But he's a terrible piece of crap, isn't he? But then, he used to be a Fox News reporter. It's like, what are your credentials to run the Department of frigging Defense? I used to talk about war and stuff on Fox News. It's insane. But once again, it's insane doesn't cover it. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. We'll come back to Trump probably at some stage. Labour WhatsApp messages on Supreme Court ruling point to future tensions on trans issues. This is going to be a significant problem, I think, for Labour going forward. It's no surprise that members of the Labour Party's LGBT plus WhatsApp group will be raising concerns about the impact this week's Supreme Court ruling has on the trans community. But the critical contributions reportedly made by some of the group's higher profile ministerial members highlight the underlying divisions with the Labour Party over the issue, and point to future tensions once the practical implications of the judgment become clear. Leaked messages to the Mail on Sunday. Now, who this is interesting, isn't it? Someone within the Labour Party is leaking information to the Mail on Sunday. The Mail on Sunday being, of course, the Daily Mail. Why would somebody within the Labour Party be leaking information to the Daily Mail or the Mail on Sunday? Allegedly include Home Office Minister Dame Angela Eagle, writing, "The ruling is not as catastrophic as it seems, but the EHRC, the Equality and Human Rights Commission guidance might be, and there are already signs that some public bodies are overreacting." Culture Minister Sir Chris Bryant reportedly replied he agreed with another MP's opinion that the EHRC chair, Baroness Faulkner, was pretty appalling when she said that the ruling would mean trans women could not use single-sex female facilities or compete in women's sports. Government sources argue that the messages are hardly evidence of any kind of plot or mass revolt against the Supreme Court's ruling, but they still raise uncomfortable questions for a party that has been in a tortuous journey over the issue. Under Jeremy Corbyn, Labour was committed to introducing self-identification, enabling people to change their legal sex without a medical diagnosis, a position dropped in 2023. Back in 2021, Sir Keir Starmer said that then Labour MP Rosie Duffield was not right to say only women have a cervix, but 3 years later he acknowledged that biologically she, of course, is right. What does this mean for people like Keir Starmer? What does Keir Starmer actually believe? Is it like, well, I believe what most people believe today, but tomorrow I will believe something else? Bridget Phillipson stood at the dispatch box like one of those dolls where you pull a string and it speaks. Supreme Court gave clarity. Supreme Court gave clarity, yes. Look, the Supreme Court did not give clarity. Like, does this mean that a gender recognition certificate is null and void? I don't know. They're saying that it's not. They're saying that, well, it will mean that women-only spaces will be blocked to anyone who's not a woman. But then how do you identify someone who, how do you identify who is a woman and who isn't? Is there going to be like some sort of genitalia check at the door? People were celebrating this victory, but it doesn't provide clarity. It maybe provides clarity in some areas, but it creates a massive amount of uncertainty because at least, look, and we're talking about a very, very small number of people. What is the point in all of this? It seems to me, once again, this is a case of the government and political parties having they're the dog and they're being wagged by a tail. A bit like when it comes to immigration, Farage is able to dictate policies. In the sense that the anti-trans people seem to be dictating the policies here. Like Starmer and the Labour Party, do they not have any real principles? It doesn't sound like they have principles if they say one thing one day and then something completely different the next day. Like they could say, look, we don't agree with the Supreme Court's ruling, but we respect the ruling and we will implement it. That would be a reasonable position to take. You say, look, I'm not personally, I don't agree with the Supreme Court's ruling, but the Supreme Court has decided and we must respect the ruling of the Supreme Court. That's, as I said, when it came to the Rwanda bill, the Rwanda scheme was completely against the ruling of the Supreme Court. Did the Conservatives say, actually, Supreme Court's right, we have to go along with that even though we disagree with it? No. They said they tried to ignore the Supreme Court, saying, no, Rwanda is safe. Do you remember that? So whether you agree with the ruling of the Supreme Court or not, it's right for the government to say, look, the government, I'm not talking about individual MPs, but the government to say, look, the Supreme Court has ruled, we respect the finding of the Supreme Court. That's what you'd have to say. Whether you as an individual MP disagree with that, that's a different thing. But it doesn't create clarity. It certainly doesn't clarify the situation. He's a fucking human rights lawyer. This is the start of everyone wearing numbers and barcodes. Orwell was right. First of all, hi Max. Hi there, Max. It's been a while. I just had my Wi-Fi on. Great to see you on the stream tonight. Once you start determining things by biological sex, what about intersex? Yeah, this is another thing. Intersex. Where does an intersex person go to the bathroom? It doesn't create the ruling doesn't create clarity. The government can say, look, we respect the ruling and we will not fight it, or it needs to be respected, but it doesn't create clarity, because we're not talking about something that's black and white. We're not talking about something that's simple. It's complicated. And, the Supreme Court must have understood that. Like, if I understand that it's complicated, surely the Supreme Court does as well. Anyway, I don't want to stay too much on that. I want to move on to our next story. If I can find it, wait a moment. Yes. So, Kemi Badenoch. Oh my goodness. Kemi Badenoch. Labour must show how they will defend and protect women following ruling. Labour MPs must show how they will defend and protect all women following the Supreme Court's ruling, Kemi Badenoch has said. The Conservative Party leader said the verdict that a woman under the Equality Act is by definition a biological woman should never have to go to the Supreme Court. Badenoch said, "It's not a okay." I'm glad the Supreme Court has finally brought clarity on this. So once again, the Tories are trying to jump on this. The Tories had nothing but contempt for the Supreme Court when they were in charge. Now they're saying the Supreme Court must be respected. When it came to Rwanda, none of the Supreme Court doesn't know. They don't understand that Rwanda is a safe country. We have determined that Rwanda is a safe. We're actually going to put it through Parliament that Rwanda is a safe country. And now they're saying, yes, you must respect the ruling of the Supreme Court. The Tories are just pathetic opportunists. Anyway, let's move on to our next story about trade. Oh, Alistair, thank you so much for that super chat. To be frank, Max, they were just defining the bill, not their opinion. They were just clarifying it. They didn't clarify anything. Yes, they were defining just the bill. Thanks for that, Alistair. Yes. What the fuck happened to the Tories? I had expected the Tories to change over the last, following the election, but unfortunately they didn't. Stu, great to see you on the stream tonight. So, optimistic Reeves hopes economic gloom will be lifted by next election.
We're going to begin this hour with some breaking news. And the International Monetary Fund has cut the UK's growth forecast by a third in its latest World Economic Outlook.
Isn't that wonderful? So the economic growth has been cut. I keep saying, and I really don't understand why the government don't do this, why they don't say, the problem is Donald Trump and the problem is Brexit. It's not going to make things better, but at least you could say, look, who are the Tories backing? They're backing Donald Trump. Who is Reform backing? They're backing Donald Trump. And both of them are backing Brexit. Now, if we want to improve the situation, we need to have a better relationship with the European Union. We need to put Brexit in the back view mirror. We need to, get rid of it. We have to do a U-turn on Brexit, basically. And we need to distance ourselves from Donald Trump. We have to start looking for real partners, reliable partners around the world. But we're not hearing any of that from the government. Sorry.
That means that the British economy is set to be among the hardest hit by the tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. Well, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, is in Washington for the IMF's spring meetings, where she will talk about trying to get a trade agreement with her US counterpart.
No. Oh, my goodness. Brad, thank you so much for that super chat. When Trump's US sneezes, the world catches a disease name removed for legal reasons. Also, my Lent abstinence from S-chats is complete. Oh, great to see you back. Thank you so much, Brad. And thank goodness Lent is over. I was worried that you had disappeared. Look, thanks, Brad. God, this whole thing of, okay, we need to do a trade deal. Look, what happened recently? Donald Trump and his administration basically sent out a message to China saying, we're going to impose tariffs on you, but don't retaliate. Please don't retaliate. Okay? And pick up the phone, give us a call so that we can do a deal. And China were like, we're not going to do that. Why would we do that? Why we have to humiliate ourselves in order for Donald Trump to do a sort of like dick measuring exercise? Is this what it's all about? You don't want us to retaliate. So then why did you impose the tariffs in the first place? No, it's just for Donald Trump to show off. So please don't retaliate and give us a call. Quick, give us a call. Make sure that we'll put you through straight away. But you have to make the call. We're not going to call you. You have to call us. No understanding of Z or no understanding of China or the idea, in Asia of losing face and stuff like that. No understanding whatsoever. And then what happened? Then we had, apart from Zelensky and Keir Starmer, then you had, who was the next country? Was it Italy? No, Japan. Japan and Italy went to see Donald Trump. The Japanese members of, I think it was the Japanese parliament, some of them came back after it, and they said that they were basically, there was an extortion racket going on in the White House. That they were being asked, okay, what can you give us? Like the Japanese delegation went to meet with Trump's administration, and they were said, what it said to them was, yeah, what can you, Japanese delegation, what can you do for us? And they're like, no, but we're here to try and sort out this problem. And then the Japanese delegation said, okay, what do you want us to do? And the Trump administration were like, I don't know. They were the negotiations. Prime Minister of Italy went there, expecting to get some sort of agreement with Trump. Kissed Trump's arse, talked about making the West great again, whatever the hell that means, and then came back with nothing. Natalie, thanks so much for that super chat. Expecting China to not retaliate in a trade war is like expecting a giant boulder to stay stationary after you shove it. Yes. Thanks for that. I think part of the problem is that Trump has surrounded himself with people who are either too afraid or too stupid to say, actually, that's a bad idea. They don't understand that other countries have their own voters to keep happy. And I keep thinking it comes down to this sort of idea, and I've mentioned it in a video, it's dropping probably tomorrow. I think all of this comes down to this. Trump wants to put pressure on countries. They will come to the negotiating table. His team will negotiate something with those countries. And then at the last minute, Trump can run into the room, or one of his minions will run into the room and say, oh, Donald Trump also wants this. Can you add this onto the trade agreement? Something like Donald Trump gets access to real estate, or he's able to buy cheap land, or you have to sell him you have to let him build a casino or something in your country, or build a hotel or whatever it is. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what this is all about. Here's a way for Trump to enrich himself while being president. There are no rules anymore. There were rules against corruption, but that's all gone. He's able to send people without due process to another to a gulag. So why the hell would he care about corruption? James, great to see you on the stream once again. Hope you're well tonight. Trump has done the impossible and driven Japan and South Korea straight to China against the US tariffs. Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? We haven't seen such such cooperation in this part of the East since when? Since the Ming Dynasty? Before the Japanese Empire. We're going back, hundreds of years. Cooperation, between Japan, China, and South Korea. Way before European colonialism. So, it's amazing, isn't it? It's moronic and self-defeating, but he has no ability to critically or change his views. He will never accept defeat. No hard reality bites him. He'll just blame someone else, and his supporters will cheer. No, you're right there. No. This is the problem with the right wing. They will never take responsibility. They keep talking. Isn't it ironic that right wing commentators will talk about, well, parents need to take responsibility for their children if their children are going hungry. But conservatives, the right wing, will never take responsibility for anything they have done. Look at the Tories. Since they've been out of office, they keep talking about how it's not my fault. It was the Blob, or it was Wokarati, or it was something else. Or it was the Labour Party before, the previous Labour government. It was their fault. Or it was the IMF, or the World Bank, or the Bank of England, or everyone else's fault. Liz Truss. Has Liz Truss ever said she has done something wrong? No. It's always somebody else's fault. So... Which begs the question, why would you want somebody in power who'll never take responsibility for anything? Only take responsibility when things go well, like the Tories when it came to inflation. Inflation is going down. We're doing a wonderful job. Inflation goes up. It's war in Ukraine, and it's the pandemic and stuff like that. Oh, guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so I just want to take a short comedy moment, and then we'll be back in just a jiffy with more serious stuff. Hope you enjoy this. Is it working? Yes.
What the fuck is this? This is a fucking disgrace! Why are the Easter eggs gone skinny? Shrinkflation has gone too far. The common man has been priced out of chocolate in the shape of an egg. This is the shape of an egg. What's that? A fucking Easter oven? Fuck off! I got too emotional and I've smashed the egg. This is what big chocolate is doing to the common man. Smashing them into little fucking bits with smaller chocolate bars and fucking weird looking Easter eggs. It started off with the Toblerone fucking widening the gaps. It's gotten so bad now that when I finish one section of my Toblerone, I have to fucking walk to the next one. Then you put poor fucking Fredo on Weight Watchers. Look in his eyes. Look what you've done to him. He barely even knows he's alive. Next year, every egg better be the proper shape, weigh 2 kilograms and cost a £5. Follow me, I'm delicious.
Apologies for the audio. I didn't expect it to explode at 10,000 decibels. Okay, moving on. Starmer and Zelensky discuss ending Russia brutal war as Putin says he's open to bilateral talks on longer ceasefire. Sky Kame, thank you so much for that super chat. Great to see you on the stream tonight. Greetings. I'll be your resident Democrat for the day. I'd like to apologize for my country and assure you there's more protests coming. Great to hear that. And I had hoped to visit New York this year, but I was afraid that I might get picked up by ICE and sent off to El Salvador, getting a free trip to El Salvador. So thanks for that. And great to see you on the stream and keep the fight up. You know, I'm a huge supporter of AOC. I really hope that she would become the next candidate for president. I hope she'll go up against whoever Trump is replaces Trump, you know, in the Republican Party, or Trump himself in 2028. I would love to see her. I don't know if she would succeed. Some people say she's too young. She doesn't have enough experience. But I think some of the criticisms that we heard about Barack Obama back in 2007, in the run-up to 2008 election, were very similar to what we're hearing about. AOC, and the Americans would never vote for a black president and stuff like that, and he's too young and he's too wet behind the ears, stuff like that. But it was, and I keep saying, it was a vote against Trump, against Bush. It was not really. There was, of course, a huge amount of support for Obama in 2008, but a lot of it was. I remember something that really continues to stick in my mind. There was a poster out. It was like hillbillies for Obama, and it said, "Even we are sick of Bush." Okay. So that was a nice thing. Brad, thank you so much for that as well. To end the war in Ukraine, send Vance to meet with Putin with his side. Yes. Vance has a big kill count, would you say, at the moment? Anyway, it says here, the Prime Minister and Ukrainian President spoke on Monday afternoon when Sir Keir reiterated his ironclad support for Ukraine. Downing Street spokesperson added that the Prime Minister said that the UK supports Ukraine's calls for Russia to commit to a full ceasefire, and that it's now is the time for Putin to show that he is serious about ending the brutal war. Look, the only way the war will truly end is when... Oh, sorry, I didn't have the thing open. The only way that the war is going to end is when Putin runs out of resources, I think. You know, when it gets to a stage where the people around Putin say, no, enough is enough. It needs to end. There's a window, use it. I think that's the way we're going to see it go. The people around Putin, the oligarchs, they are going to say, look, no, it's over. Because he's not going to say it, so he'll be. There are, if you follow a number of podcasters, some of them are saying that he's already dead. That is just a body double, and he has a dozen of them or something like that. That'd be a pretty terrible job, wouldn't it? It's like, go out there, speak to the public. Yeah, but they might shoot me. No, you don't worry. You'll be fine. Or Putin is put down. I worry for Zelensky. It in a sense, the fact that the United States is removing itself, it puts pressure on the Europeans, and then the Europeans have to fill that gap. And I think there is, at least at the moment, there is an appetite to protect Ukraine. So I think that's going to continue for some time. He looks like a wax dummy. Yes, he does indeed. Anyway, let's move on. So the Conservatives are stuck in this sort of loop that keeps going over and over and over about immigration. they can't give up on immigration. They have to continue saying, okay, we need to win back people that we lost to reform over immigration, and we can succeed if we be a bit more like Farage. We can convince people to vote for us. So here is Chris Philp talking about the migration crime league tables.
We do support it, and we've been pressuring the Labour government to do this for some time now. We think it will provide transparency over who is committing crimes. There was some analysis done
Now, who do you think commits most crimes in Britain? Or in any country? It's the native population. Now, do you think on a crime league table, who do you think will be at the top of the crime league table? Do you think it will be in Britain, the United Kingdom, citizens? Or do you think it'll be other countries? And there's another problem. Apart from all the racism and xenophobia connected to this, it's not something that would actually work out very well. Because if you imagine you have a population of, a foreign population of 100,000 people from Poland, and you have 5,000 people from Malta. Politicians is what's it naturally? Politicians will be at the top of the list. Thanks for that. But if you have like 100,000 from Poland and 5,000 from Malta, how is the league table going to operate? Is it going to be by percentage, by real numbers? And then what about people who have dual citizenship? Because a lot of people have maybe they have Pakistani citizenship and British citizenship. What about in Northern Ireland, where people can have dual citizenship? So what if people have dual citizenship with Israel? Are they going to be included in this? Are they included as Israeli or as British? So if they're British, are they included at all? These are some of the questions. I think these are legitimate questions. Now, apart from, we know what this is about. This is about the Tories and Reform say, hey, we need a bit more racism. Labour, can you be a bit more racist? And they go, okay, but just this time, and then we have to we have to knock this off, okay? Will you, Robert Jenrick and the Tories and Nigel Farage, will you promise not to bring up immigration again? And they say, yes, we promise. Fingers crossed. Chris Philp looks like someone who's got their hair stuck in a fence before. We'll get to Chris in a moment. Thanks, Brad. Rachel from accounting. The deadly duo Truss and the Shady Pants need a monarch or Pope knocked off. And you know where to find them. You can call the a-hole team. Somebody needs to do an AI version of that. Thanks so much, Rachel. You're off to the US, I hear. Anyway, let's get back to Chris.
A few weeks ago, actually, that showed, for example, that Afghan men are 22 times more likely to commit sex offences than on average. That is...
Okay. What evidence do you have to back up that claim? What's that based on? And is it convictions, or is it arrests, or is it accusations, or what?
Is the kind of information that I think does need to be in the public domain.
Why? No, why does it need to be in the public domain? How would it help ordinary people if they know, well, the biggest, according to Chris Philp, the biggest threat is people from Afghanistan. But then you would assume that everyone from Afghanistan is a criminal. But even Chris Philp would say that's not the case. So, are ordinary citizens supposed to identify who is a criminal and who isn't? It's insane.
How will that help people with their daily lives, Mr. Phil?
Well, it will help us frame our immigration policies, for example.
No, I was asking about people. How would this help ordinary people? How does it help a member of the public to know who's committing more, which nationality is committing more crimes or not? And then, if you're living next door to somebody from another country, you may not know from what country they came from, from what country they are. You may think, well, this person, I think they're from Afghanistan, when in reality maybe they're from Pakistan. Or you may think this person is from Poland, when in reality they're from Latvia. You may not know, and if you don't know, that what's the value of this league table?
And it will also help us understand whether these foreign criminals are being removed. Now, I'm concerned that not
if they're being removed. A league table will determine whether these people are if these. Are you going to remove people who have not committed a crime? Are you going Trump on us?
Now, I'm concerned that not enough foreign criminals are being removed. We put down an amendment to the Borders Bill just a few weeks ago, in fact.
Why didn't you do it when you were in power?
Well, we certainly deported a lot of foreign...
I'm not a huge fan of Nick Ferrari, but sometimes, he has his moments and asks very simple questions and embarrasses Tories, but then it's very easy to embarrass Chris Philp.
Deported a lot of foreign criminals.
Why didn't you do league tables when you were in power?
Well, we did publish certain data on foreign criminals, which you can find
online. Why didn't you do these league tables, which is what you're pushing for? I mean, less than 12 months ago, you and your colleagues were at the helm. Why didn't you do it then?
Yeah, well, I wasn't responsible for the immigration figures.
See, it's not my fault. So, why didn't you do it? Well, because we didn't give a shit, basically. The Tories don't care about immigration. They care about immigration as a tool. They don't actually care about immigration itself. See, the Tories have always relied on using immigration as a wedge issue to convince people, look, you need to vote for us, because if you don't vote for us, Labour will open the floodgates and everyone will come in. What were the Tories saying? And what have they been saying? If we're not in power, Labour will just let everyone from all over the world, there are 7-8 billion people, they'll all want to come to Britain. And they'll all be able to come to Britain if Labour get into power. Remember they were saying stuff like that? They've gone a bit quiet on that instead. It's about their base, yes, but the problem for the Conservatives at the moment is their base is heading in the direction of Reform UK. Because if you're xenophobic, why would you vote for the Conservatives who are trying to mimic Reform when you can vote for the real thing? You can vote for Farage. Farage is saying, hey, I would actually stop the immigrants. I would actually send people back to France. Ben Habib, who used to be a member, would allow people to drown in the sea. These are the people you should be voting for if you care about immigration. Why would you vote for the Tories when the Tories are like, yeah, we might try and send some of them back. We'll send very strong worded letters to France. While Reform would say, we would go to war with France. We would bomb Calais if they didn't take back the immigrants.
12 months ago. But look, we think this is the right thing to do, and that's why we've been pushing the Labour government to do this. Okay. They've obviously responded to that pressure. But what we really need, the really important thing, is to make sure that not just some, but all...
And here is the problem. I raised this in a video today. The problem is these people will never be happy. There's no point in... See, this is the problem Labour have. If Reform and the Conservatives say, oh, we need a league table, and then Labour go, okay, we'll give you a league table. Then they say, oh, but the league table is enough. You need to deport more. Okay, we'll deport more. Oh, but you're not deporting enough. Why aren't you sending people to Afghanistan? You can't send people to Afghanistan. Well, if we were in charge, we would send people to Afghanistan. Yeah, but you can't have a deal with the Taliban. We would have a deal with the Taliban. This is all. There's no point in giving anything to Reform or the Conservatives on the issue of immigration, because they'll never be satisfied, because they're not interested in fixing problems. They're only interested in creating problems.
All foreign criminals get removed. Okay. One of the things that's stopping that is the way that the human rights laws are being applied, and that's why we proposed an amendment again to the Borders Bill just a few weeks ago to disapply the Human Rights Act from immigration matters.
You're not going to do that because that will be a breach of the European Convention on Human Rights, which of course is the cornerstone of the Good Friday Agreement. So once again, the Tories are just pretending. They don't care about leaving the European Convention on Human Rights because it would be a breach of the Good Friday Agreement, and they're not going to do that. They don't care about him. If they cared about stopping the small boats, they would support creating safe routes, but they don't want to do that. It's all just bullshit. I want to cover this because maybe there's some good news. Maybe this is good news. Let me see.
On the question of Europe, as I've made absolutely clear, we want to reset our relations with Europe, to improve those relations. That's been brought into sharp focus in the last 3 or 4 months on the question of security and defence. And we have to recognise we're moving into a new era where all Europeans need to step up on security and defence, and that's the discussions we're having with the EU and others. I also think on trade and the economy, we need to step up and reset. And so those are the changes that I hope we can make in an important summit that will be a milestone in May. Thank you very much.
Okay. Is he really serious about rejoining the European Union? Of course not. Is he serious about having a better relationship with the European Union? Well, it seems to be the case. So, of course, if the UK wants to strengthen security in Europe, the UK has to be part of that. And I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to build bridges, that Donald Trump has burnt down, build bridges with Europe and get access to what we're going to see. We're going to see massive investment in weapons, in armaments over the next number of years in Europe, and Britain will be providing some of that. So there will be opportunities for British industry to supply some of those weapons. Damn it, it's that boring Max chap again. Sorry to hear that. Canadian election next Monday. Fingers crossed, Mark Carney. Yes, thanks for that, Ivan. The other candidate, of course, is he was a supporter of Trump, it seems, until recently. Then he realized, well, actually, better do a bit of a U-turn there. I've been inundated on social media from a lot of conservatives in Canada pushing the idea that no, Carney is a disaster. Carney would be terrible for the economy. It's been a massive turnaround. Justin Trudeau was expected, his party, with the Liberals, were expected to lose the general election. Now they're expected to win, and who's helping them? Who's helping Carney? It's Donald Trump. So this potentially could be a vote not for Mark Carney, but a vote against Donald Trump, against Canada's enemies. And the biggest enemy, of course, at the moment is the United States under Donald Trump. And I think I haven't been really following Canadian politics, but I think probably Carney is the best they have. There are other parties as well, but the Conservatives are led by a guy who wants to have a good relationship, it seems, with Donald Trump. But we're starting to realize, most people are realizing, that that's not possible. You can't have a good relationship with Trump. Either you do as he says, and that's it. Questionable. Thank you so much. That's your jet. I've noticed that the palpital click in English denotes the moment of self-righteous indignation will follow. Listen out for it on LBC. Oh, okay. I will indeed. Thanks for that. Slowly but surely rejoin the EU. The more Donald Trump does, the more belligerent he is, I think we're going to see a better relationship between the UK and the EU. The EU needs access to British weapons if it's to rearm. Apart from, let's leave the politics aside for a moment, but if the European Union wants to rearm, if it wants to rebuild its military infrastructure, it needs to rely on the UK. And if the UK wants to boost its economy, at least in the military sector, then it needs to access this procurement in the EU. I wanted to ask you something and this is a great time. So, Max, I asked you if you did you ever hear of Kanzuk, and if so, what are your thoughts on it? So Kanzuk was this idea, or not an idea, but it's been going on for some time about. So it's Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. So these ex-colonies, in a sense, working together, a bit like the Commonwealth when it comes to trade. There are some problems with Kanzuk because of the locations. You know, most of our trade is done with our neighbours. So until recently, and I used the United States and Canada as an example, Australia trades more with China than it does with Europe or the United Kingdom. Australia has just signed or is working to sign an agreement with China at the moment when it comes to beef. The United States used to sell a lot of beef to China. Now Australia has taken over from the US, it seems, because the rule of you trade mostly with your neighbors is sort of coming to an end in a sense because of Donald Trump. But when it comes to Kanzuk, I think we're going to see something similar to Kanzuk, but not limited to those countries. I think we're also going to see greater cooperation between Canada and the EU, the UK and the EU. The EU will be the centre of this. Australia, New Zealand with the EU as well. So I think the countries that used to rely on the US are starting, as the Western countries, I think they're going to see the EU as their centre. And we're already seeing a dumping of the dollar and greater support for the euro becoming a reserve currency. You know, that period of American dominance in world trade is not coming to an end, but it's certainly under a lot of pressure. And remember, the strength of the dollar allowed for the American economy to run up massive deficits and still fund its public services. I think the Commonwealth will start to reform much stronger. The Commonwealth, you probably will see greater cooperation, but I think this thing could be something, if it's done right, it could be something pretty strong. So could Canada ever join the EU? Well, if you had asked me 6 months ago, I'd say no, because it doesn't meet the criteria. But the criteria may be changed because of what's happening in the US at the moment. Many people don't seem to understand that what Donald Trump is doing isn't just damaging the economy, it's also damaging relations between the US and other countries. And it's not just between the US and Canada or the US and the European Union. It's also damaging the US's relationship with other countries around. Like if you were living in Taiwan at the moment, if you're living in Taiwan, I would be very afraid, because you had relied on the US to come to your aid if you were invaded by China. But now China's like, okay, the US is imploding. Maybe just wait another few months, maybe another year. And then, as the US is tearing itself apart, then we could invade Taiwan. And, Chinese nationalists, if I can use that term, it's not really the right term to use. But anyway, I think you get what I'm implying here. The ones in mainland China, they're the one. They really want to go to war with Taiwan. They really want to take that part, the Republic of China, back. Canada is only 12 kilometers away from the French territory. Canada is one of the EU neighbors. Yeah, it's sort of stretching it, but it's more about it's not so much about the distance from an EU member state. It's more about the distance from Europe itself, and Canada is quite far away. But I'm not saying that that's not going to change in the sense of the relationship. It's certainly getting stronger, I think. And I think if Carney is elected, I think we're going to see greater cooperation between Canada and Europe. Canada and Denmark share a border. That's true. Yes, with Greenland. If the US doesn't invade Greenland, that is, and that could happen. We're almost at the end of the stream. I just want to cover one final story here. A blast from the past. You will never guess who I'm going to show you now. Maybe you don't remember him. Dominic Raab. Do you remember Dominic Raab?
You look at the...
Would you believe Dominic Raab has a new job? He's a lobbyist. Surprise, surprise.
Critical minerals and rare earth space. There is a massive monopoly. The elephant in the room is China's monopoly in large areas of this. And we've seen, of course, recently export restrictions on those minerals being traded outside of China. China's also gone around, you look at DRC, another issue, Congo, that's been in the news, the copper and the cobalt mines. It's also bought up a lot of the mines and the capacity to do the refining and the processing. So what I think we're seeing from the US is a focus on a massive long-term strategic issue and quite a lot of detail coming out in the executive orders. The appointment of Marco Rubio has been red hot on this as a senator of Florida. And actually, again, some of the media froth and the polarization aside, we haven't seen the US president focus on such a long-term strategic issue. I think that's welcome. There's a
Donald Trump is not a long-term strategic issue. Donald Trump wants to go back to the 1800s, the Gilded Age, when there were like 5 people who owned everything. That's the era he wants to go. That's why he's talking about, using something like the, I think it's happening, it should be happening around this time, the Sedition Act and stuff like that. Does Raab even know where China is? He doesn't know where Dover is. So it could be a bit difficult for him to find China on a map. Thanks, Brad. Why is Dominic Raab being interviewed? Well, you can see the word here, lobbyist. Who is he lobbying for? That would be interesting to know. I like some of the pictures that some people have posted here. Jeanette has Dominic Raab, Esther and Walton, 30,500 in donations. And he's wearing a nice Russian uniform there. Wanted Comrade Boris for crimes against British democracy. Conservative Party, £4.2 million from the Russians. There we go. Anyway, sorry, who is he lobbying for? I would love to know, but we don't have time to investigate today. So I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for your super chats. Thanks you so much for your support. Thanks for smashing the like button as you do. If you haven't, you can always smash it on the way out. Before we go, we have our one video for the road. I want to say once again, thanks to everyone. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job as always. Sorry, I let you know so late in the day about the stream. Anyway, let's jump into this before we go.
Welcome to Broken News. The BBC has reinstated Match of the Day presenter and crisp icon Gary Lineker after coming to a deal over his controversial political tweets. Director General Tim Davie said the lovely and surprisingly flexible 62-year-old could return to air after the two parties reached a compromise, whereby Lineker agreed to absolutely none of the BBC's demands. Lineker had refused to apologise and said he wouldn't retract his comments, which a BBC spokesperson said definitely amounted to him backing down. Our reporter Shaniqua Trayvon III has more.
A national broadcasting icon, the tight-bunned former England striker had been accused of saying something factually accurate. His claim that government rhetoric had similarities to that used in 1930s Germany had been verified as objectively true by both historians and experts. But many, including racists and arseholes, deemed it untrue, citing articles shared on Facebook by their mums. Commentators like toad-faced grifter Nigel Farage and Talk TV's fish-lipped piss-flap Mike Graham decried Lineker's comments as an attempt to silence the government and said the only way to stop this sort of cancel culture was for Lineker to be sacked. Shaniqua Trayvon III for Broken News, London.
Shaniqua, thank you. In a statement aimed at ending the row, BBC bosses said that despite mass walkouts by its most popular presenters, a very real damaging of trust in the BBC and a step towards destroying one of the remaining good things about this country, the corporation had done absolutely nothing wrong and you should shut the fuck up. That's it from Broken News. You're up to date.
Good one. So guys, have a great week. I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Stay safe, take care and good night.